In 1987, the thrash metal scene was an absolute battlefield of titans. Metallica had just conquered the world with their previous year's Master of Puppets, and Slayer had unleashed the pure chaos of Rain and Blood. But from the heart of the Bay Area, a new contender was about to step into the ring and change the game forever. Before they were the legendary Testament, they were a band called Legacy, fronted by a different singer. So how did a band that was seemingly on the verge of collapse with a brand new vocalist manage to create not just one of the best albums of 1987, but one of the most powerful debut albums in metal history? I want to let you guys know I've had a number of people request this topic, so remember, it pays off to suggest topics to me. There was something in the water in California in the early to mid 80s, and it was turning kids into thrash metal maniacs. Bands like Metallica, Slayer, and Megadeth were already rewriting the rules of heavy music, becoming the stuff of legends. The scene in the Bay Area was a fertile breeding ground, a network of clubs, fanzines, and most importantly, the tape trading scene that let new sounds spread like wildfire. As hair metal began dominating the airwaves, a small but bold wave of bands was forging a different path, a more aggressive underground that would soon flip the mainstream on its head. Metallica usually get the nod as thrash pioneers, and with good reason, but it's important to not overlook Motorhead's stamp on the sound. Without their relentless tempos, that genre-defining gauntlet would have never been thrown. Thrash borrowed from Motorhead's speed and grit, fused it with the sneer of the Sex Pistols and the sharp musicianship of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and emerged as a movement that stood for everything that commercial metal didn't. By 1984, Metallica had made San Francisco their headquarters and were already making serious waves. Meanwhile, former Metallica guitarist Dave Mustaine was building his legacy in LA with Megadeth, while Anthrax was staking its claim in New York. And not long after, San Francisco's Legacy, soon rechristened as Testament, as well as New Jersey's Overkill, jumped into the mix. For nearly 10 years, these bands unleashed music that was faster, aggressive, and more heavier than anything the majors were willing to touch at the time. All that adrenaline fueled the sheer chaos of their live shows too. Bodies flew off stages, and a new breed of crowd action, moshing, borrowing from hardcore, became the norm, with fans spinning and smashing into each other in a whirl of sweat, bruises, and just wild energy. Testament frontman Chuck Billy told John Wiederhorn in the book Louder Than Hell what San Francisco was like in the 80s, admitting San Francisco was known for its glam bands too. So when metal was rising in the Bay Area, the whole theme for us was kill the posers. And to us, the posers were the guys who were into glam. I think our crazy young madness and all our threats eventually drove all the glam out of San Francisco, and that's why San Francisco rose as more of a thrash metal center. This whole community was built on a shared hunger for something faster, heavier, and way more aggressive than anything on radio. It was a scene that was defined by its intensity, not just in the music, but in the audience as well. As original Legacy singer Steve Zetra-Souza recalled about shows at the legendary club Ruthie's in, the energy was so insane that the bands needed a human barricade just to avoid getting knocked over on stage. It was out of this hyper-competitive, supercharged environment that a new force began to stir. They weren't just another band, they were a collection of musicians who would soon find themselves nipping at the heels of the genre's founding fathers. They were a little late to the party compared to their peers, but Testament was about to make a pretty big introduction. The band is widely regarded as one of the top bands from the second wave of the Bay Area thrash scene. Actually, Testament was around just as early as Metallica and Anthrax, initially using the moniker Legacy. It all kicked off with the moniker Legacy in 1983, the brainchild of cousins Eric Peterson on rhythm guitar and his cousin Derek Ramirez on lead. Their sound was forged in the fires of new wave of British heavy metal, with Peterson citing bands like Judas Priest and Venom as key influences, mixed with the aggression of their Bay Area peers. Living in Oakland, the pair would cut school and head to San Francisco. It was there they met future drummer Louis Clementi. They ended up jamming and wrote the song Secret Agent, which became First Strike is Deadly, which eventually found its way into Testament's 1987 debut record. They were joined by Greg Christian on bass and a charismatic frontman named Steve Zetra-Souza. Soon afterwards, Derek Ramirez left after getting a girl pregnant, and they met guitarist Alex Skolnick. Skolnick, by his own admission, was really nervous, being unable to look at the members in the eyes during his audition when he was 15. But they were blown away by his playing. Skolnick had studied under Bay Area guitarist Joe Satriani. Skolnick was in a band called Blackthorn at the time and was initially a little hesitant to join Testament, but he came to one of their shows and really liked the song Curse of the Legions of Death. It was soon afterwards he finally joined the group. With Skolnick on board, him and Peterson soon wrote the track Burnt Offerings. Peterson told Wiederhorn, "We made a great team. I had a lot of darkness in my sound, and he knew more about playing scales on the guitar than I did." Sousa was also a key part of that early identity and even referred to the younger members like Skolnick and Christian as his young sons. The pieces were slowly falling into place, and the lineup recorded a demo tape around 1985. But Legacy was about to go through a massive shift, one that could have completely shattered the group. Sousa soon left and joined Exodus. Now, losing your frontman at such a critical moment is often a death sentence, but Sousa left them with a parting gift, a recommendation. He told them to check out a local singer with a powerhouse voice named Chuck Billy. Billy admitted to Wiederhorn, "I went to college for vocal and guitar. I didn't know much about thrash metal. I called him," referring to Alex Skolnick, "and he said, 'Yeah, come on down. I brought this hella PA and a case of beer, and they had a tiny little room. I had to sing in the hallway because I couldn't fit in the room with them.'" As far back as 1985, Legacy were already in discussions with Megaforce Records about being signed. This was when Sousa was still fronting the group. But after the singer change, they cut a new 4-song demo tape which included the songs Over the Wall and The Haunted. Megaforce were still interested and actually thought that Billy was a better frontman for the group. So they flew out to San Francisco to see the band perform. But the mood was quite somber as it was September 28th, 1986. The folks at Megaforce and Legacy were friends with Metallica, and one day prior, bassist Cliff Burton had died in a bus accident on tour. While Legacy did get signed that night to Megaforce, everyone was too sad to celebrate the occasion. With Chuck Billy now at the helm, the band was ready to record their debut. At the recommendation of Megaforce Records, the band hooked up with producer Eric Paralis, who had previously worked with Stormtroopers of Death on their album Speak English or Die. The members were all fans of the group and the record. The members of Legacy were all big fans of that record. They soon relocated from California to Pyramid Sound Studios in Ithaca, New York. It was a pretty big wake-up call as the climate was a lot different in New York than it was in California. But the cold temperatures actually helped the band focus and not spend too much time outside of the studio dealing with distractions. But there was one last hurdle that Legacy had to face. They got some bad news. A legal issue had come up. Another band described as a jazz or R&B act already trademarked the name Legacy. Forced to change their name in the middle of recording their debut record, they needed a new identity, and fast. Billy recalled, "We knew that was going to happen before going into the studio. We'd found out that there was another band who'd already trademarked the name. It wasn't a shock for us. It was a friend of the group's, Billy Milano, who was the frontman for Stormtroopers of Death. He proposed the name Testament." Billy added, "We immediately liked it, and Eric started to play around with the logo, and once we saw it, it all made sense. As a nod to where they came from, they decided to call their debut album The Legacy." The pressure was on now. They were no longer a local band, they were Testament, signed to a major label, and everyone expected them to deliver the goods on an album that could stand tall with the genre's masterpieces. Released on April 21st, 1987, The Legacy was an absolute atom bomb. It hit the scene with the force of a thunderclap, a stunning mix of polished traditional metal and the raw, unhinged energy of thrash. This wasn't just another fast album, it was a masterclass in musicianship. Eric Peterson's rhythm guitar work was a marvel of intricate, razor-sharp riffing that twisted and turned in ways you didn't see coming. He later named The Legacy as one of his favorite top 3 Testament albums, simply because, and I quote, "It was our debut and there's some classic stuff on there." And then there was Alex Skolnick. His solos were a total revelation. Instead of just shredding for the sake of it, the lead work actually sang with a melodic and technical finesse that set Testament miles apart from their peers. Driving it all home was the rhythm section of Greg Christian and Louis Clementi, a relentless engine of pure power and rhythmic complexity. At the forefront of it all was Chuck Billy. Even though most of the lyrics and vocal melodies were written by Sousa before Billy joined the group, Billy made them completely his own, delivering them with a commanding roar that was both aggressive and remarkably clear. His voice, a bit higher on this album than on Testament's later work, was the perfect weapon to lead the charge. Billy himself was involved in just one song on the record, Do or Die. But despite the situation with changing singers, Billy had no qualms about singing another person's lyrics, admitting that the group's follow-up record, The New Order, was the one that felt more like a band. Billy had no qualms about singing another person's lyrics. He did admit that the band's follow-up record, 1988's The New Order, felt more like a band setting, largely because the band had been on the road touring for several years, and they were more familiar with one another. Billy also contributed more to the songwriting on the second record, writing some of the songs acoustically while on the tour bus. Getting back to the legacy, tracks like the opener Over the Wall became instant anthems, a perfect snapshot of Testament's sound with its explosive riffs and pummeling drums. Burnt Offerings and The Haunting showed their darker, more atmospheric side, with lyrics that were steeped in the occult and supernatural. Peterson commented on this saying, "We were into horror movies, mythology, and darker stuff. We liked that the lyrics could be visual, almost cinematic." Apocalyptic City closed the album with a display of dynamic ambition, proving that they were way more than just a one-trick pony. There was another song that was recorded during these sessions called Reign of Terror that was cut after a night out at one of the local bars in Ithaca. As Billy recalled, he was out of his mind when he recorded the song and it sounded pretty rough, claiming that it was more in line with death metal than thrash. It never made the final record, but it was issued as a B-side, the Trial by Fire single, which came out on their subsequent record, 1988's The New Order. All in all, the legacy was a statement. Testament had arrived and they had the songs to back it up. If you're a fan of this era of thrash, or you're just discovering this masterpiece, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and let me know in the comments what's your favorite track from the legacy. Upon its release, The Legacy was an immediate underground smash. While it didn't exactly make Testament mainstream stars overnight, it earned them a ton of respect with the thrash community. A huge part of their breakthrough came from MTV. In an era wherein music videos were the king, the video for Over the Wall went into regular rotation on the now legendary metal show Headbangers Ball, which exposed them to a massive new audience. That exposure was backed up by nonstop touring. Testament hit the road hard, embarking on a worldwide tour where they shared stages with the very titans they were now being compared to. They toured with Anthrax on their Among the Living tour and also opened for Megadeth, proving night after night they belonged in the genre's elite tier. They weren't just riding a wave, they were helping build a new one. The Legacy is now seen as a cornerstone of thrash metal's celebrated second wave, opening the door for countless bands that followed. From the moment The Legacy dropped, the debate began. The world knew about the big four of thrash, Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax, but as fans and critics absorbed the sheer quality of Testament's debut, a new question started to pop up. Should it be the big five? For many, Testament was the obvious next in line, the heir apparent to the thrash metal throne, while others pointed to Exodus. The Legacy is Exhibit A in that argument. Alex Skolnick reflected on the Big Four term, stating, "Personally, it felt like a media thing. I don't feel any disrespect if we're not mentioned alongside those groups, as I guess I view the phrase as some kind of seniority. It wasn't just a great debut, it was an album that pushed the whole genre forward. It injected a new level of technical skill, melodic intelligence, and songwriting smarts into the thrash formula." Chuck Billy once said, "We weren't just trying to be fast, we wanted people to hear the songs and remember them. We wanted melody and darkness, not just speed for speed's sake." Now, interestingly enough, years later, Billy admitted to Louder Sound that he wasn't happy with the final product, admitting that their debut record had too many mistakes as a result of their technique and the equipment they used in the studio. The band wanted to remix their whole debut album, but Atlantic Records, who owned the rights to Megaforce's back catalog, refused to give them the master tapes. So the band ended up re-recording 4 songs, which included Burnt Offerings, The Haunting, Alone in the Dark, and Over the Wall, for their 2001 record, First Strike, Still Deadly. The Legacy is so much more than just a classic album. It's the sound of a band overcoming insane obstacles and grabbing their moment. It's the story of a group of young musicians who took the foundation laid by their heroes and built something new and thrilling on top of it. They survived a name change and a singer change, 2 things that would have destroyed lesser bands, and channeled that chaos into creating one of the most confident, powerful, and technically brilliant debut albums in the history of metal. Decades later, the songs from the legacy are still staples of their live set, a testament to their enduring power. Despite all the praise, the band felt like they missed the opportunity to be as big as Metallica. Billy told Loudersound, "You know, in the music business, it's all about timing. I don't look back and regret what may or may not have happened. There were moments and opportunities for us to break into Metallica's league, but we never took advantage of these for various reasons. All I can tell you is that we were made stronger by every failure." So what do you guys think? Is Testament part of your big five of thrash? Let me know your list down below in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into metal history. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.